There comes a moment in every man's life when he realizes something profoundly important. Life doesn't become more peaceful because people suddenly change. It becomes more peaceful because he does. For years, many men believed that being a good person meant always saying yes, always helping, always being available, always avoiding conflict. But after decades of experience, they discover a difficult psychological truth. Without boundaries, kindness often turns into exhaustion, generosity turns into expectation, and peace quietly disappears. The wisest senior men don't build walls, they build boundaries, not to keep good people out, but to protect what matters most. In developmental psychology, establishing firm boundaries in your later years is the ultimate sign of individuation, the realization that your primary duty is to your own well-being. Today we will explore the psychology of self-preservation. We will dissect the 7 boundaries every senior man should have, not to become cold or distant, but to live with vastly greater freedom, confidence, and peace. Let us uncover the truth. Section 1. Boundary number 1. Protect your time like your greatest investment. One of the biggest psychological changes after 60 is how a man perceives time. When he was younger, it felt endless. There was always another year, another opportunity, another chance to rest. But later in life, the mathematics of mortality come into sharp focus. Every hour feels exponentially more valuable. That is why wise senior men stop giving their time away carelessly. They don't automatically say yes to every request. They don't spend entire afternoons doing things they don't enjoy simply because they feel guilty. Instead, before agreeing to anything, they ask one incredibly important question. Is this worthy of my remaining time? That question changes everything. They still help people. They still deeply support family and true friends. But they understand that protecting their own time isn't selfish. It's responsible. Because time is the one resource in the universe that can never, ever be replaced. And once a man begins protecting his time, he naturally becomes more protective of something else, his emotional energy. Section 2. Boundary number 2. Don't carry everyone else's emotional burdens. Many men spend decades trying to solve everyone's problems. Children, friends, neighbors, co-workers. Society conditions men to be the ultimate utility, the fixer. They become the person everyone calls during a crisis. While helping others is admirable, constantly carrying other people's stress comes at a severe biological cost. Over time, it drains emotional energy. It steals sleep. It creates chronic anxiety and spikes cortisol levels. Wise senior men learn an incredibly important psychological distinction. Supporting someone is healthy. Living someone else's life is not. They listen with compassion. They offer advice when it is explicitly wanted. They lend a hand when they genuinely can. But they no longer believe they must rescue every single person who struggles. They realize that constantly bailing people out prevents those people from developing their own resilience. Some lessons can only be learned by living through them. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do is step back and allow others to take full responsibility for their own choices. Protecting emotional energy also fundamentally changes how a man responds to conflict. Section 3. Boundary number 3. Refuse conversations that only create conflict. When men are younger, the ego demands victory. But after 60, the sovereign man realizes a profound truth. Not every disagreement deserves your attention. Some people do not want understanding. They want an argument. They feed on chaos. Older men eventually recognize the difference between a debate and a trap. They stop debating strangers online. They stop trying to convince people who have already made up their minds. They stop explaining themselves to those who aren't truly listening. This does not mean they are cowardly or that they avoid difficult conversations. It means they avoid pointless ones. Their goal is no longer to win every single discussion. Their goal is to protect their clarity, their dignity, and their peace. Sometimes the strongest, most impenetrable response is not a clever comeback. It is choosing silence. because silence often preserves far more energy than the perfect argument ever could. And perhaps the next boundary is the one many men struggle to set for the vast majority of their lives. Section 4. Boundary number 4. Learn to say no without feeling guilty. For many men, saying no is one of the hardest lessons to learn. Throughout life, many men become known as dependable, the one who always helps, always fixes problems, always shows up. While these qualities earn respect, they can also attract highly unrealistic expectations. People begin assuming you will always be available, but after 60, they finally understand that every time they say yes to something they don't truly want, they are saying no to themselves. Older men eventually realize something incredibly powerful. A respectful no doesn't make you selfish. It makes you honest. They no longer agree to favors that leave them exhausted. They no longer attend every event out of obligation. They no longer sacrifice their cardiovascular health just to avoid disappointing someone. Instead, they politely say, "I appreciate you asking, but I can't commit to that." No long, drawn-out explanations, no fabricated excuses, no unnecessary guilt, just pure, unshakable honesty. Because every healthy boundary begins with the courage to say no. Once a man learns to protect his time and energy, he also learns to fiercely protect his finances. Section 5. Boundary number 5. Never let money replace good judgment. As men grow older, they often become the absolute financial bedrock of the family. Children may ask for help with a down payment. Relatives may request loans. Friends may present great business opportunities. Helping people is admirable, but experienced men know that money can quickly, violently damage relationships when boundaries disappear. In psychology, mixing family and finance often leads to entitlement and resentment. Therefore, the sovereign man sets iron-clad financial boundaries. They never loan money they cannot afford to lose. They never make major financial decisions under emotional pressure or guilt. They never feel obligated to solve every single financial problem around them. Instead, they help wisely, not impulsively, because protecting your financial security also protects your ultimate independence. You did not work for 40 years to become a bank for everyone else's poor decisions. A peaceful retirement isn't built only by earning money. It is built by fiercely protecting it. Financial independence is undeniably important, but protecting your personal space and time matters just as much. Section 6, boundary number 6, guard your daily routine. One of the greatest, most intoxicating gifts after retirement is finally having absolute control over your day. Many older men create meticulously curated routines that drastically improve their lives. Morning walks, reading, exercise, healthy meals, prayer or meditation, quality time with family. These simple daily habits create profound psychological stability. They act as anchors for the nervous system. But without strict boundaries, other people's demands slowly, insidiously begin taking over. Wise senior men protect their routines as if their lives depend on it, because they do. They don't apologize for taking care of their health. They don't feel guilty for scheduling quiet time and refusing to answer the phone. They understand that discipline isn't restrictive, it is freeing, because a well-protected routine leads to better cardiovascular health, greater inner peace, and a vastly stronger sense of purpose. And finally, there is one boundary that influences, dictates, and sustains every other one. Section 7. Boundary number 7. Never compromise your values to please others. Perhaps the most important boundary of all is completely invisible. It is the line you absolutely refuse to cross. Your values, your integrity, your character. Older men have lived long enough to know how dangerously easy it is to compromise just to avoid conflict, to stay silent when something feels deeply wrong, to agree with the crowd just to be accepted, to ignore their foundational principles for temporary comfort. But wisdom teaches a completely different, much harder lesson. Respect from others means absolutely nothing if it costs you your self-respect. That's why high-value senior men remain polite, but firm, open-minded, but fiercely principled. They don't need everyone to agree with them. They simply refuse to betray the values they have spent a lifetime building. Because at the end of life, as you look back on the timeline of your existence, your reputation isn't defined by how many people liked you. It is defined by whether you remained unshakably, unapologetically true to yourself. To the younger men watching this, do not wait until you are 60 to build your walls. Learn to protect your time, your money, and your peace today. And to the older men watching this, the ones who have drawn their lines in the sand, the ones who have stopped apologizing for their boundaries, you have built a masterpiece. Never let anyone shame you for guarding the sanctuary you spent a lifetime bleeding to create. If you are a man who has chosen the path of sovereignty, I want to hear your truth. Head down to the comments and tell me, which of these 7 boundaries was the absolute hardest for you to learn to set? Your scars and your wisdom will help guide the younger men who are still fighting blindly through the storm. If you found value in this deep dive into male psychology, please hit the like button, subscribe to the Sage Academy channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a lesson. Thank you for watching. Until next time, guard your sanctuary and protect your peace.